Welcome back to another episode of Insights with Experts, where we aim to encourage and foster discussion, learning, and creating an informed global community. To view this and other interviews in detail, head over to theseer.org, linked in the description. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe to our channel for constant updates. Enjoy the episode.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Insights with Experts. Joining us here today, we are very, very fortunate to have Mr. Joel Hauer, who's currently based in Sydney.
Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, of course. It's really, really nice to have you here. So Joel, the first question that we would like to ask you is essentially an overview of your journey. I only said your title, where you're based, and I think it'd be nice if we got much more of an insight into that. So essentially, what made you want to start Liqualoot? What did your journey look like, and so on?
Yeah, sure. So essentially, I started it a couple of years ago, about 4 or 5 years ago now. I wasn't in the alcohol space beforehand. I was actually in advertising and marketing. But I was working very closely with e-commerce businesses and kind of in that space of creating a brand and creating a product. And I'd seen that done more from a kind of a sideline perspective as an advertising consultant. Working in a small agency and essentially wanted to try and do something for myself. And you know, the idea didn't just pop into my head, but there was a period of time where I was looking for ideas. And I was looking for things that ticked a few boxes for me. The idea of alcohol and something that is a premium product, but often out of reach for a lot of consumers. The delivery of it, obviously, in tasting format, was something that struck me as a scalable product that you could create a very nice brand around. Obviously, at the end of the day, I wouldn't be doing it if I couldn't deliver value to people. And it's something that, it's a good price point, but you get to take, $400 or $500 worth of whiskey in every box, instead of going and buying that full bottle and, potentially not liking it. So if you don't like it, that's not a bad thing. Maybe you've wasted $10 or $15 on that individual taster. So there's a lot more value in terms of kind of the tasting, which we do. Essentially the business started by myself. I grew it small, or it started off small, but I grew it pretty consistently. And we've had 2 rounds of funding at the moment. We're up to about 15 staff, all based in Sydney. I've learned a lot on the journey.
I would like to talk about that really quickly. Now, you went from being this sole person to having 15 staff. How can you compare those experiences? What did you learn from being that sole person, and what did you learn having 15 people around you?
What you learn by being a sole person is that you need to do everything yourself. No one is going to do it for you. No one is going to answer the hard questions or figure out the strategy or solve the problems. I went from, 5 minutes of doing an email campaign and you're jumping between tasks really quickly. So maybe half your day is, your day's probably split up in 10 different things. It might be packing some boxes, working with Australia Post, implementing some new thing onto your website, trying to do a deal with a retailer, talking with distilleries about their product, And throughout that whole process, you're kind of juggling a lot of different tasks. So you need to be someone that can make decisions quite quickly. I think analysis paralysis can be a little bit of a problem that plagues early stage entrepreneurs, especially if they haven't done another business before. And then compare that to when you've got 15 staff. I wouldn't say that every job is taken and you have nothing to do, because that's never the case. But a lot of the day-to-day stuff is taken by other people, and you're more working on the longer-term, bigger, more strategic problems, again, that you need to solve, but also opportunities that you might be chasing.
Right. And with that as well, I just want to move on to the whole wider idea of Liqualoot and everything. surrounding it. Now, it's no secret that alcohol, it's a good that, has its social, I mean, it's safe for us to say that it's not really advocated in schools and stuff like that. And going into this industry isn't something that's socially respected as, say, other social enterprises like NGOs and so on. And with that, I just wanted to ask if you found if it was a challenge with the lack of social support in starting Liquorland, seeing where alcohol fits and so on. And with that as well, I'd like to ask, do you have any advice for any other entrepreneurs who want to start a firm with a good that isn't perhaps looked on by society as respectable as other things would be?
Yeah, sure. Good question. The opportunity, I think you need to look at holistically. So if you want to solve a problem, that problem, might be specifically to a social injustice that's happening in the world, and you might not be there as your primary focus to make money, but you're trying to solve a more holistic issue. I went into it finding a opportunity that could be a profitable business that I could scale. So I wasn't mainly aiming for that, but there are ways in which throughout this process we've found that we are actually having some social good as well. So even though alcohol is something that consumers, I guess, aren't, I don't know how to word it. It's not, a hugely positive movement. That's, I guess, focusing on some of the downfalls of alcohol abuse. The global trend of alcohol at the moment is actually premiumization and reduction in the quantity of what you're drinking. So you've actually got people, it's going up this way in terms of the quality of what you're drinking, and it's going down in terms of the quantity. And essentially that plays perfectly within our segment. So we've done a couple of calculations on, the amount of wasted bottles that people might buy if they buy a 700ml bottle and it just sits on the shelf and, they didn't like it after the first sip. There's an economic waste there, there's a societal waste there, and there's an environmental waste there. So it actually equates to about 1 million litres worth of water that could not have been used towards those bottles that were purchased for wastage, essentially. So within that entire chain, you can still find the positives. And we're promoting a product that is obviously not about overconsumption or abuse of alcohol or anything like that. It's about consumption within your limits and about tasting and exploring it. Our market really prefers the premium whiskies, and that really shows, I guess, where the business can provide value, and scaling that is only a good thing.
That's quite interesting, and it almost sounds like you've had all these things in your mind for quite some time. And with that as well, I just want you to imagine now for a second that you're now on the first day of starting Liquorland, and you get to restart this entire journey, but you have all the knowledge that you had up until now. What would you do now if you had the chance to restart everything again, and why?
Hope you're enjoying the episode so far. To learn more about Orakui, as well as more information about our upcoming episodes, don't forget to follow our socials for constant updates and education content. Links are always in the description.
Hindsight is a beautiful thing because, in that scenario, I would know that it would be successful. I didn't know it was going to be successful. So with that knowledge, it's a very different strategy. If you have no risk of failure, then you can spend a lot more time planning and launching bigger, essentially. And we've been, in the last 4.5 years, we've been through 3 website full redesigns, full replatforming. We've been through 4 warehouses that is moving your warehouse, moving everything, all the staff, all the computers, all the stock. we've changed, I guess, the actual subscription methodology twice. And we've introduced a lot more features to our product from a consumer online perspective and what is delivered. So, if that hindsight gave me all of that information, then I would have started with what is working today, not where I was 4 years ago. But the process of iterating and learning and testing and getting market feedback is the only way I would have known what is working today. It's impossible to skip those points. So there might be the worst, part of the business where, you feel like you're going nowhere, and there's a lot of work to do to kind of get the perfect picture of what you want to achieve. But that's still a good thing, because you're going to learn and get a lot of feedback from your customers on what is working and what is not working.
Going into, I guess, alcohol-specific questions, for the wine industry, there is generally a trend of New World versus Old World, and there is increased credibility and reputation for New World. Do you think for the whiskey and gin industry, we're seeing a similar transition from, I guess, Scott, Japanese, and bourbon to whiskeys and gin produced outside of those countries? Australia has quite reputable newer distilleries for whiskeys,
Yep.
Sullivan Coles, and Four Pillars for gin and stuff like that. So are you seeing the same
Yep.
trends and the same shift?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a big trend in terms of, there's a movement from craft distillers, and that's creating a lot of fragmentation in the market. So you have a lot of high-end distilleries and brands and conglomerates that have traditionally just been selling whiskey and full bottles into retail. And the biggest movers of those categories are the lower price points. So they might sell, 1,000 Johnny Walker Red for every 3 Johnny Walker Blue. So there's a huge discrepancy in kind of the volume. So what we're seeing is a lot of uptake in craft distillers. In Australia, there's 120 distilleries at the moment, which is more than Scotland. So they might be smaller, they might be less mature, but there is a huge growth in the volume of them. And it really shows, I guess, where the market is going. Similar to what happened in beer in kind of the 90s, where there was a huge boom in craft beer, and that continues today. So the distillery industry, whether we're talking about gin or whiskey, is following that same trend.
For someone looking to enter whiskey, or at least trying to appreciate it, any advice on how he starts his journey? Should he try a little bit of everything, or should he start from a specific country, a specific distillery, or what?
Jump on whiskeyloot.com. That's exactly the problem we solve. So it's about starting your whiskey journey, and we take you through a pre-planned program, which we call the Whiskey Loot playlist, which is 12 months. In a specific order, you'll receive 3 different samples each month. And those will be synchronized with videos that you can watch from experts like us here at Whiskey Loot, that go through the taste profiles of those whiskies, as well as the history, what makes them special, what is interesting about the grain. So across the 12 months, you will taste 36 whiskies, 9 different countries, starting with the easier stuff, going to the more complex, going for different grains, different production processes, different age profiles. So it is the best way to have a full gamut experience, instead of waiting 4 or 5 years to try and do it yourself, going to buy 1 bottle a month from the bottle shop and spending, $5,000 or $10,000 on bottles.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but Liquor Loot started with a whiskey subscription box, and you've recently transitioned to a gin subscription box. So why the choice of gin? Why not rum? Why not any other alcohol beverage of choice?
Yeah, that's a good question. We're working on the other ones at the moment, so it's a bit of a tiered launch. But Liquor Loot was always meant to have an ecosystem of brands, and that's our approach. So starting with Whiskey Loot, we defined the product, the market, and the fact that people wanted this solution, and we're rolling out gin, and the others will come shortly.
And just as an additional question, what do you think the take up is between whiskey, gin, or the wine or stuff within Australia? Is there a clear preferred beverage of choice?
Wine and beer are the two main ones. Spirits is third. Within spirits, gin comes first, and then whiskey. But whiskey is a more premium product. So that's where the premiumization of the market is going. It's actually hard to find a gin over, say, $100. But obviously, whiskey, there's plenty over that price point.
Awesome. And with that, we're now at the last question of the interview. And so to end off this interview, we're going to ask you a classic question, which we ask everyone that we interview. And essentially what that is if you could leave young people with just one piece of advice, what would that one piece of advice actually be?
Don't aim for perfection. So there's, I guess universities teach you kind of there's right and wrong, and you've got to aim for 100%. In business, if you aim for 100% and you want to be perfect, you're going to spend 95% of your time talking to people, getting advice. All that advice is going to lead you down a million different pathways. None of them are going to be deemed to be incorrect until you go down one of those pathways. So you just got to get out there and try things, experiment, get feedback, try and work as well as you can, obviously, but aim for 80% perfection, and that will get you a lot further down the line quicker than someone that's aiming for 100% perfection. Especially when it comes to digital marketing, you can change a lot of things on the fly. So it is more around actually getting a few different offers out there, a few different value propositions, trying to see which one sticks, getting that feedback and iterating.